A Ukrainian source tells CNN that a sea drone hit a Russian Navy ship in the Black Sea, causing what's described as serious damage. CNN's Nick Payton-Walsh is covering the story for us in Ukraine.
The footage is grainy and dark. Then the target comes into view. Russia's Olenegorski Gornyak amphibious assault ship. An unmanned attack drone approaches its target. 450 kilograms of TNT detonates, and the feed cuts out.
On the night of September 13, 2024, the Black Sea became a hunting ground. 14 Russian naval vessels sat in the darkness, their fuel lines connected, their defenses down, completely vulnerable. They had no idea Ukrainian forces were watching every single movement. What happened next would change the entire naval balance in the Black Sea forever. Picture this, it's 2:47 a.m. The Russian Black Sea Fleet has gathered at a supposedly secure anchorage near occupied Crimea. 14 ships, frigates, patrol boats, landing craft, support vessels, all clustered together like sitting ducks. They're refueling from a massive supply tanker because fuel is running critically low. The commanders think they're safe. It's the middle of the night. They're far from the front lines. Their air defense systems are partially powered down to conserve energy during the refueling operation. This is routine, right? Wrong. Ukrainian intelligence has been tracking this pattern for weeks. Every few days, the Russian fleet needs to refuel. They always do it at night. They always think darkness protects them, but modern warfare doesn't sleep, and neither do Ukrainian surveillance drones. High above the Black Sea, at an altitude the Russians can't detect, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones are capturing every detail in crystal clear infrared. The heat signatures from 14 ships light up the screens like a Christmas tree. Ukrainian military planners see this live feed and realize something incredible. They've got the entire fleet in one place at their most vulnerable moment. The clock starts ticking. Ukrainian commanders know they have maybe a 2-hour window before the refueling is complete, and these ships scatter back to their defensive positions. 2 hours to plan, coordinate, and execute what could be the most devastating naval strike of the entire war. The decision is made in minutes. This is the opportunity they've been waiting for. Here's where it gets intense. Ukraine doesn't have a traditional navy anymore. Most of their ships were destroyed or captured early in the war. But what they do have is something the Russians never prepared for: a deadly combination of Neptune anti-ship missiles, naval drones, and tactical ingenuity that's rewriting the rules of naval warfare. The operational plan comes together fast. Launch Neptune missiles from mobile coastal batteries to overwhelm their air defenses. Send in naval drones, those small, explosive-packed speedboats, to hit ships the missiles miss. Coordinate everything to arrive at the target simultaneously, giving the Russians zero time to react. At 3:15 a.m., Ukrainian mobile missile launchers move into position along the coast. These aren't sitting in permanent bases where Russian satellites can spot them. They're hidden in civilian-looking trucks, constantly moving, impossible to track. Each launcher carries Neptune missiles, Ukraine's homegrown anti-ship weapon with a range of over 300 kilometers. These missiles fly low, just meters above the water, using terrain-following radar to stay invisible until the last second. The targeting data is already uploaded from the surveillance drones. Every ship's exact position, speed, and heading is locked in. At 3:34 a.m., the first wave launches. 4 Neptune missiles streak toward the target, their turbofan engines pushing them to nearly 900 kilometers per hour. They're flying so low that Russian radar systems completely miss them until they're less than 30 kilometers away. When the Russian ships finally detect the threat, alarms blare across every vessel. Crews scramble to their stations. Air defense systems power up. But here's the problem: they're still connected by fuel lines. They can't maneuver, they can't scatter. They're trapped in a kill zone of their own making. The Neptune missiles arrive first. The lead missile slams into a patrol frigate, punching through the hull and detonating inside the ship's engine room. The explosion is massive, sending flames hundreds of feet into the night sky. The second missile hits a landing craft loaded with ammunition. When it detonates, secondary explosions rip the ship apart, sending shrapnel into 2 neighboring vessels. Chaos erupts across the fleet. Ships desperately try to disconnect fuel lines, but it's too late. The third and fourth missiles find their targets with surgical precision. Now comes the really brutal part. While Russian crews are fighting fires and trying to save their ships, Ukrainian naval drones are already en route. These aren't the small hobby drones you're thinking of. These are 7-meter-long vessels packed with 500 kilograms of explosives, controlled remotely from hundreds of kilometers away. They're fast, hitting speeds over 80 kilometers per hour, and they're nearly impossible to stop because they're so small and low to the water. Russian machine guns and small-caliber weapons fire frantically, but hitting a speeding drone in the darkness while your ship is on fire is nearly impossible. The first drone crashes into the side of a frigate that survived the missile strike. The explosion tears a hole in the hull below the waterline. The ship immediately starts taking on water, listing heavily to one side. A second drone targets the fuel tanker itself, the floating gas station that's supplying the entire fleet. If that goes up, the whole anchorage becomes an inferno. Russian sailors know this. They're firing everything they have at the incoming drone. Tracers light up the darkness. But the drone operator is skilled, weaving the small craft through the defensive fire. At the last moment, the drone makes a sharp turn and slams into the tanker's portside fuel storage compartment. What happens next is catastrophic. The tanker doesn't just explode, it erupts in a fireball visible from 50 kilometers away. Burning fuel spreads across the water's surface, turning the sea itself into fire. Ships that were already damaged now face a new threat, being burned alive. Crews abandon vessels, jumping into waters that are literally on fire in some places. The Russian fleet's supposedly secure anchorage has become a death trap. Ukrainian commanders, watching the live feed from drones, can barely believe what they're seeing. In less than 20 minutes, they've inflicted more damage on the Russian Black Sea fleet than in months of previous operations. But they're not done. Intelligence reports indicate Russian rescue ships and tugboats are scrambling from Sevastopol to help. Ukrainian forces launch a second wave, 2 more Neptune missiles targeting the rescue vessels before they can even reach the burning ships. One missile scores a direct hit on a rescue tug, sending it to the bottom. The other missile forces 2 more support ships to turn back, fearing they'll be next. By 4:30 a.m., it's over. Of the 14 Russian ships in the anchorage, 4 are confirmed sunk. 6 more are severely damaged and burning. 3 made it out but with significant damage. Only 4 ships escaped relatively unscathed, and those captains ignored orders to help and fled at maximum speed the moment the first missile hit. The Black Sea is littered with burning wreckage, rescue rafts, and the flaming remnants of Russia's naval power in the region. Russian military leadership is in complete shock. They scramble their air force to hunt for the missile launchers, but by the time jets arrive, the Ukrainian mobile batteries are long gone, hidden in pre-prepared positions or blended into civilian traffic. Russian officials initially claim it was an accident, a fuel fire that got out of control. But satellite imagery and Ukrainian drone footage tell a very different story. Within hours, that footage is all over social media, showing the world exactly what happened. So why did this operation succeed so spectacularly? Let's break down the genius behind Ukraine's strategy. First, patience and intelligence. Ukrainian forces didn't just randomly attack. They studied Russian naval patterns for weeks, identified the refueling schedule, and waited for the perfect moment when maximum ships would be concentrated and vulnerable. This is modern warfare intelligence at its finest. Not just knowing where your enemy is, but predicting where they'll be and catching them at their weakest. Second, the element of surprise combined with overwhelming force. The Russians expected maybe a single drone attack at worst. Instead, they got a coordinated missile and drone assault from multiple vectors, all timed to hit simultaneously. Their air defense systems, designed to handle threats one at a time, were completely overwhelmed. It's like trying to swat 10 flies at once. You might get 1 or 2, but the rest are getting through. Third, Ukraine exploited a fundamental vulnerability: refueling operations. Warships are most vulnerable when they can't move. The Russians chose tactical convenience over security, clustering their fleet for efficient refueling rather than spreading out for safety. Ukrainian planners recognized this fatal flaw and capitalized on it brutally. Fourth, technological adaptation. Ukraine didn't have a conventional navy, so they invented a new kind of naval warfare using land-based missiles and remote-controlled attack boats. These cheap, mobile, difficult-to-detect weapons turned out to be more effective against modern warships than anyone anticipated. A naval drone costing maybe $50,000 just sank a patrol boat worth $50 million. That's revolutionary asymmetric warfare. Fifth, mobile strike capability. Those Neptune missile launchers aren't sitting in permanent bases where they can be targeted. They're constantly moving, launching from unexpected positions, and disappearing before retaliation is possible. Russia can't destroy what they can't find, and Ukraine mastered the art of shoot-and-scoot tactics that keep Russian forces guessing. The strategic implications are enormous. After this attack, the Russian Black Sea Fleet is effectively combat ineffective. They've lost so many ships that they can't maintain their previous patrol patterns or effectively blockade Ukrainian ports. Russian vessels now stay close to Crimean shores, hiding under land-based air defense coverage, terrified of venturing into open water. The psychological impact is equally devastating. Russian sailors know that Ukrainian forces can reach them anywhere, anytime, even in areas they thought were completely secure. That fear degrades operational effectiveness more than any weapon system. For Russia, this represents a strategic disaster. They've spent decades and billions of rubles building this fleet. Now a significant portion is sitting on the bottom of the Black Sea, destroyed by a country that barely has a navy. It's humiliating on a global scale. For Ukraine, this is validation of their unconventional approach to warfare. They proved you don't need aircraft carriers and destroyers to dominate maritime operations. You need intelligence, innovation, and the courage to strike when your enemy thinks they're safe. Here's the broader lesson that every military in the world is studying right now. The nature of naval warfare has fundamentally changed. Traditional surface fleets with their billion-dollar warships are incredibly vulnerable to cheap, smart, networked weapons operated by a determined enemy. Ukraine showed that small drones and mobile missiles, when used with intelligence and coordination, can neutralize naval forces that would have been untouchable 20 years ago. The rules have changed, and most navies haven't adapted yet. This attack also sent a clear message to Russia's military leadership. Nowhere is safe. Not your air bases, not your supply depots, and definitely not your naval anchorages. Ukrainian forces demonstrated they have the capability and the will to strike deep into Russian-controlled territory and inflict catastrophic losses. That psychological warfare aspect can't be underestimated. Every Russian commander now has to assume they're being watched. They're vulnerable, and the next attack could come at any moment. So what does this mean for the future of the conflict? Russia's ability to project power from the Black Sea is severely diminished. They can't effectively blockade Ukrainian ports or threaten amphibious operations anymore. Their remaining ships are staying close to shore, essentially rendered combat ineffective by fear. Meanwhile, Ukraine gains more breathing room for maritime operations, potentially opening new supply routes and reducing Russia's strategic options. The bigger question is this: if Ukraine, with limited resources and no traditional navy, can inflict this level of damage on a major military power, what does that say about the future of warfare? Are massive conventional militaries becoming obsolete? Can innovation and asymmetric tactics level the playing field against seemingly superior forces? Ukraine isn't just fighting for survival, they're writing the playbook for 21st century warfare, and the whole world is watching and learning. Think about it: what other assumptions about modern warfare are about to be proven wrong?